because we're seeing these people as players or as a cog in this machine, we're not actually looking after them.
Football careers don't happen in isolation, but they're really a reflection of everything else that happens to normal people like you and I.
So what it shows you is if you give these people love and you give them some form of support, they can literally skyrocket.
I think it's a book for everybody because it is focusing on a lot of different areas of being human as opposed to just being about football or being about sociology.
It documents the things that you don't see. It's the bits about players at home, what they're thinking when they're not playing. You know, what are they doing when they finish training? Are they resting? You know, what sort of things do they do to get the best out of themselves? I think it's a really good insight.
So I'm Kevin George, I'm an author and psychotherapist. So my work is predominantly around human performance. So although I'm a qualified psychotherapist, I look at what gets people to perform at their best in relationships and in their workspace.
So you were a professional footballer, so for most people that's the dream, that's living the dream. Why did you decide to remove yourself from football and get into the areas that you decided to get into?
I fell out of love with football because it mistreated me, and I realised I wasn't the only one. There's thousands of players who feel the same, but they kind of, because they can't think outside the box or it's too painful, they end up just kind of setting up a life in another space and just prodding along. Whereas for myself, I set up a life somewhere else, i.e. setting up a business in education. But my friends were still in the game, I still had, you know, people that I knew in the Premier League, etc. And I always wanted to be back in that space. So it's like, even though football hurt me, I felt like I had unfinished business there. And when I say it hurt me, it's because when you grow up in football, you're always told that no matter what, you will get a chance if you put a shift in. If you work hard enough, you will get a chance. And when I got released from my contract, when I was at Cheltenham, and Alan Kirbyshire called me in the office and he said, we're not going to renew your contract. When I walked out, his assistant manager, Keith Peacock, called me in, which he didn't need to do. But I knew that he felt a bit of guilt because he had trained me a lot around that time. He was the reserve manager. And he asked me if, you know, how I felt about it. And I said to him, I felt like I deserved the chance and I never got it. And he said to me, do you know, in all the years I've been doing this, loads of people have said that you're the only person I agree with. So I was proud, but on the other hand, I was disappointed. I thought, hold on, these are my best years. In football terms, in that time, it's my formative years, really. How can you tell me that? So that hurt me, and I feel like because I hustled my way in football, I was training every day, I was as fit as the pros before I became a pro. I was lying to get into football clubs, to get on trials. That's how I got into West Ham before Charlton, and all those things, because I was willing to do whatever it took. So then when I got served that, I thought, unconsciously, I'm not willing to do that again. You know, so when I would go into a trial, I wouldn't be fit. You know, and that's just the basics, like you should be fit, that's like a given. But I was unwilling to reinvest. And it's not as an attitude, I didn't say to myself, I'm not willing to do that anymore. I think it was just, I just sunk into this space of just, I don't know, I just lost in a way. And I was kind of, I was still trying to be a footballer, but only because I didn't know anything else. So yeah.
So when you came to that realization that you had an interest in psychology,
Yeah.
What is it that made you have a holistic approach to life? Because obviously you applied this to your life. What made you have a holistic approach to mind? Was it someone that influenced you? Was it someone that exposed psychology to you? What actually happened?
I've always thought there was more to life. Always. So even in football, I didn't get scouted. As I said, I hustled my way in. But in general, I just always I don't know what it was. I can't even articulate it. But when Mickey Bennett, the head of the Professional Football Association's welfare department, said to me, oh, you should look into the counselling, studying counselling. It blew my mind. He was saying, you should look into it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do a course. And once I did that one course, that was it. Because I started to learn about myself. I started to reflect on my childhood in school. I started to look at family. I started to look at my time in football. And I started to make sense of everything. I never had the answers, but everything started to come into play. And I I developed a passion. It became my new football. And I was like, wow, I understand a bit more about the difference that made a difference in all different spaces. And that kind of motivated me to read more. I started to read books on NLP, then I started to study NLP, then I started to further do my psychotherapy training. And now obviously I'm going to probably go into neuroscience because I just love that, you know, as human beings, like I find us so interesting. So yeah, it was just, I think it was that one conversation about you should look into studying counselling, and that one course triggered so much. And especially because on that course, I was the only man, it was like over 20 women, and they nearly attacked my tutor, who was an older lady, because they said, oh, we're doing this course and we're not learning anything. But the reason being is because the class was set up in a non-traditional teaching style. It was a horseshoe, and it's about relationships. And they couldn't understand that because it challenged their perception of what education was, which is sitting behind a desk. And so even that alone was like, wow, because of it disturbed their pattern, they became very defensive and very aggressive. And I couldn't believe it. I was just like, wow. And it made me think about other areas and how other people do that in certain situations. And then, yeah, it just kicked on.
So you have this experience of football now, this experience of psychology, and you decide to merge the two in pretty much creating a book.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very interested because off camera you actually said that you weren't interested in books, and now you have this large library. Why did you decide to write the book?
Because I think it was around 2010 I became curious as to what is actually out there for people who want to learn more about football. And there's nothing. And as I became more curious, I started to stumble across people like Michel Brunings, who's credited with something called brain-centered learning in Belgium. And obviously Belgian football was turned around massively, and he's worked with the top players there. So focusing on the brain. And then I started to stumble across someone like Professor Jocelyn Faubert, who's in my book, around looking at the unconscious mind. And so I was like, wow, no one talks about this stuff. I'm in England, we have the biggest league in the world. Then I created a blog site, and people were getting like interested around the world. Loads of people, more and more people were reading these blogs that I was writing. Then I got asked to deliver a program. I think the first clubs I delivered to, it was a Premier League tournament for under 15s or 16s. Fulham were there, Arsenal were there, and a few other teams. Can't remember who, I didn't deliver to all of them. And that was the start of me delivering to the Premier League teams, but from under 10s all the way up, parents and coaches. And I thought, hold on a minute, I'm repeating myself here. So I realized there's a massive gap. They're loving what I'm doing, but I'm also repeating myself. So I'm thinking, first of all, I need to create something where people have access. And also I need to create something where the people who don't have the privilege of being in these Premier League academies can have access to it. And so that's what inspired me to write the book.
One of the most interesting things I found about the book, and I kind of saw a little bit of myself in it, was the training ground Maradona aspect, in terms of you have this person that's a superstar on the training ground, and then you have this person that doesn't perform on the weekend. Why did you decide to talk about that? And my thing is, mention some of the things that can actually help these individuals that you obviously mentioned in the book.
Said TGI, Training Ground International. Yes, that's so popular. So many players crumble under that pressure. Because in training, if you give the ball away and your team score and the other team scores, yeah, people will be annoyed, but it's not going to affect your position on the league table, whether you be first team or youth team. So people are going to be more daring. They're going to face calculated risk as calculated risk and not risk. The moment it comes to a game, an official match, pressure's on. And this is where a coach comes in play, because you see the difference in the coach. He's more intense. And you become aware of that. And you might not think, oh, the coach has become more aware, but you feel it because the pressure. Just do it simple, just do this, just do that. And all of a sudden you're on edge. So this is where you get Training Ground International, and and the reason I came up with that label, not me, my friends, because one of our friends within our group, he was unbelievable in training, but he couldn't reproduce in a match. And this happens literally throughout, I mean, since then, even now. So I was in a Premier League team a couple months ago, working with the under 23s. I was with 21 players, around 21. 19 of the players said they're not playing at their best. I think it was 3 who said they are. The 19 said it's because of their coaches. So when it comes to a game, they can't perform. Now, the reason why this is so important is because because football is not equipped to understand what's going on, they say, oh, player's legs are gone, or player can't handle the pressure, or player's not good enough. Whatever it is, to protect my ignorance, I'm going to say a comment. But what that person's showing you in training is actually physically I'm capable to do whatever I'm doing, because it's the same thing that I'll do in the game. But emotionally, there's a block. There's something preventing me from doing that in the game. And so the coaches or the managers, they should be looking at, okay, how can I help that player to recreate what they're doing in training in a match? But unfortunately, they're not equipped to do so in football, because to be a coach or a manager, they don't actually look at what that role actually is. The verb of coaching or managing. It's the same as whether you're in the corporate world. You know, obviously the content's going to be different in both spaces, but actually it's about getting that person to perform at their best. Football's light years behind everybody else. And it's not because it's like a relatively new occupation. It's because football's a gated community. It's slightly opened up recently, but because it's gated, my ignorance is protected. So if I've played in the Premier League for so many years, I know everything because I was a great player. Now I'm a coach. So now my level of a coach is predicated on my experience as a player. That doesn't make any sense. So now, for me to get the best out of you, I can do that because I was a great player. That's like me saying I'm a great teacher because I was a clever student. That doesn't make any sense at all. But unfortunately, the gated community was protecting ignorance, and it's changed slightly because we have the EPPP, where it brings in people, i.e. a psychotherapist, or a psychologist, or a welfare officer, or there are expectations now. Systematically, there are expectations. Even though there's still a long way to go, it's kind of loosened that structure.
What I really liked about the book is you made a reference to mental health. And when there's a lot of talk about mental health for men, but we only see mental health in one way, which is the destruction, the problems. But mental health is actually twofold. Go into what you talked about mental health being twofold and how ways we can actually shape and help our brain, because you mentioned that in the book as well about our mental health and how we can create better minds.
Yeah. So everyone's talking at the moment about, it's good to talk about mental health. Let's talk about mental health, which is brilliant. But now I'm worried that actually this conversation that we're having about mental health is providing a miseducation, because everyone's like, speak out. It's good to talk, and it's all about illness. It's not about health. So people still don't know what mental health is. So you have, for example, you have illness and you have wellness, right? But also you have I wouldn't say the hierarchy. I would say, would I say hierarchy? I would say like there's not an understanding around emotions. So let's look at it like this. When I played football, I was anxious. I'd have a tingling, nervous feeling when I would go on the pitch, but it was brilliant for my performance because it kept me on my toes. And I'd love to have that. I didn't know what it was at the time, but now I look back on it, it's like, okay, that kept me on my toes. I needed that. But there was also a time when my anxiety was too much that it was crippling my performance. So we have good anxiety and bad anxiety, right? But at the moment, again, when we talk about anxiety, it's always negative. And so at the moment, the reason why when I did that chapter on mental health, I wanted to highlight the spectrum. And yes, I spoke about Gail Clichy, talked about meditation and well-being and how his performances on the pitch spiked. Which was, I think he highlighted the game against Barcelona in the Champions League when he was at Arsenal as like what showed him the value of meditation and his life off the pitch. And then we look at the other side with Leon McKenzie talking about his struggles and wanting to commit suicide. But then we look at the other side again, which I thought was brilliant, was Anthony Gardner. For me, the reason why it resonates so much is Anthony was talking about going out and drinking to kind of cope with the injuries he was going through. But the reason why it was interesting because when he was going out and drinking, I was with him. But I didn't know this was going on because the environment of football, I'm going to project this character and you're going to project a character. So we're projecting, we don't even know each other. So when I look at a lot of players who I came up with, a lot of them don't speak to each other. They haven't fallen out, but there's no real depth to the relationships because everyone's projecting. So it's like these projections know each other, but I don't really know you. You're there, like I can't see you. And I feel that we go to extremes when we talk about mental health, but actually there's low level stuff. Even the fact of me not feeling comfortable enough to be myself. So yes, I talk about the depths of Leon wanting to commit suicide, 'cause that's a reality of it. But yes, you got Gail Clichy in terms of the well-being. Then Fabian Delph talking about the injuries, how people spoke about him as his injuries, but actually him using that to change his lifestyle. When you see Fabian Delph, his body, he is ripped. And the detail and attention he gives himself now because of the issues that he went through injury, he changed it around. And I feel that it's looking at the finer details of ourselves to kind of say, do you know what? I have, what's the word I'm looking for? I have the resources to lead a life that I would like to lead, you know? And it's not just a case of speak out, this, that. No, embrace all of you. Sadness is a part of life. Happiness is a part of life. It's all a part of life. They're all neutral, you know? So, yeah, I'm hoping that I tackled all of that in the mental health chapter.
I was kind of thinking about, even coming from the area that I come from myself and a similar area that you grew up in, there's a lot of socio-economic problems, and football tends to want the star but doesn't want the person behind the star. Do you think football is changing and actually understanding that these children are actually coming from backgrounds where they may have had bereavement, socio-economic problems, they may be in gang territory zones? Is football actually embracing the person, or do they need to do a lot more to help these individuals?
Football for years have always had people who would go above and beyond for these people. Football's always had these people. There's not enough of them. And also, even though their heart's in the right place, they're not capable, you know, and it's not a diss or anything like that, but they just don't understand. So it gets to a stage where when you look at a lot of players who struggle on their own, they come from dysfunctional families, and it will play out in bad behaviour. And so what football will do is say, I'm going to give you a chance. But actually, football is not giving them a chance, because it's a relationship. This person's already showed you they're struggling. You know, they're struggling with their parents' addiction. They're struggling with dad beating up mum. They're struggling with being in care. They're struggling with all of these things. And there's so many times they've been let down. There's so many times where their trust has been broken. And so what they may do is project an aggressive, I'm using one example, but project an aggressive character to protect the wounded child in them. And so what a coach would do is say, I got an attitude. And so what's going to happen is now you're going to validate this aggressive character now, because I'm protecting this wounded child in me in here, because now you're judging me. And the role of a coach is, again, it's like teachers. You're a parent, you're a mentor, you know, you're a social worker. That is the role. Unfortunately, that's the role. And when you're getting these kids that are coming from, and by the way, clubs actually set up satellite centres in the hood on purpose, because the best players come from there, because they want those ones who are resilient, they want those ones who have gone through the tough times, because those are the character traits they love, but they don't acknowledge that they're still vulnerable. And so even when I spoke to Colin Kazim-Richards, and he said, when he was at Arsenal, a lot of people don't know this, I think that was the first club he went to, and he was like, Kev, he goes, I got on the train, I'm going through gang territory to get to training to this man to talk about, oh, fix your face, this, that. And he's like, he doesn't even know what I've been through just to get here. Or when my dad was dropping me, like, he's having to work all these jobs, and then like literally like we're struggling, and he's just shouting at me, he's questioning my body language, and there's all these judgment. And when you're going into space, when someone's continuously judging you and accusing you of things, you're naturally going to get your back up, and you're naturally going to then actually embody a negative body language, because really and truly, it's just, that's just the stage before you probably end up cussing the person out. So it's best you just, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to internalize all this vexedness and anger that I have, because I don't want to cuss you out, because I'm going to try and manage this. But the coach is the professional. The coach should be saying, look, what's going on? Because this is how you come across. So it's not a judgment, oh, you're this, no, this is what's going on for you. And do you know what? That person may not even be capable to have that conversation there and then. It might even take a whole season. Do you know what? You take the time out to invest. You have the small conversations from the changing room to the pitch, because these things are buried so deep, and it's about taking that time. Now, speaking to my friends who are coach, one of them's a coach yesterday, and they were former professional players. They're like, "You're asking too much of these coaches." I say, "No, I'm not. I'm saying in the professional game, when we were younger, you trained twice a week and you played on the weekend. Now these boys who are in school are training pretty much full time. and they're moving schools. So I'm saying these kids are committing so much. They don't get to form real connection with their families. They miss out on so much. Their parents remortgaging their houses, changing their car, because obviously they're ferrying back and forth. Now what I'm saying, a coach doesn't have to do all of this stuff, but then they can say, do you know what? I'm not capable, I'm unwilling to invest all that, so I'm not going to sign you. Let's do that. But don't sign them and say, you. No, that's not right, because if that's your child in the school, you're not going to accept that. You're going to expect the teacher to do all they can. If this doesn't work, okay, we're going to try this. And if that don't work, we're going to try that, etc. Football is a football school. That's what it is. So, yeah.
Everyone, I feel that footballers, when I was a kid, I was football mad. That's pretty much almost what I thought about. I wanted to ask you, how important do you think it is for young footballers, whether they're starting out or nearing their end to the retirement stage, is it to have outside interests outside of football? How imperative do you think
Oh
that is?
my God, it is. Oh my, I don't even know what to say. It's like, oh my God. Listen, all right, I don't even know where to start with this, but that question is so important.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, when I speak to my wife about certain things, and she says, oh, you don't know about that? Oh, you don't know about this? My life was football. The world's going on, I'm like this. Because I loved it so much, but also, even if I try to do that, my commitment will get questioned. So then it was like, so the moment, even if I did do that, it's almost like, okay, I'm serious about football, so I have to be camera tunnel vision. Now, granted that I latched onto football because I wasn't exposed to things outside. Like, and now I wish someone spoke to me about neuroscience or the depth of psychology as a kid. But maybe I might not have been interested, I might not have taken it on, maybe this was just a part of my journey. But I feel that yes, they need to embody other aspects of life. And because football, and this is what I was saying a moment ago, it demands so much from them, that it's really hard to kind of take in other things, if I'm being honest, because these schoolboys, for example, they go to school, they get home, they've got to quickly rush something in their mouth to have something to eat. They don't have to training. By the time they come to get back home from training, maybe squeeze some homework in, they go to bed. But I feel that it's really important that, I think maybe it's probably families and I don't know, schools should be doing this for kids in general, but giving them tasters of different jobs that are out there, different things that are happening in the world, because when I look back, I don't think I was exposed to much at all. So I feel with football, it can support their football, but actually it will help them, because I think a lot of footballers, when they come out of football, it's like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I don't know much about the world outside of football. And I think if you know more about yourself and you're more educated in terms of life experiences, it can help you to survive. You know, when I look at a lot of the Dutch players and not the French players, they're so educated. It's absolute madness. And you don't really hear much of I don't have the stats, but in terms of their well-being, you don't really hear much about them falling off in comparison to what we do here. So, yeah.
What really pushed me to ask that question, and when I read the book, was the incident. It wasn't particularly an incident, but I think it was an example of like an uncle, and he had the nephew or the son there, and he goes, oh, don't you know he plays for Aston Villa? And that really made me think about all the people that I knew when they were younger. When they got released, they were so depressed because they became so identified with football, and there was nothing else for them to. It was almost as if their family didn't value them outside of football. So how important do you think it is in terms of family to make sure that they're pushing them all aside from that kind of arena of thinking just about football?
It's really important. I don't remember, you sure it's Aston Villa? I know there was a situation with Anton Ferdinand, which I don't know if I mentioned in the book, but when I was at West Ham, we used to travel in together. And I'll never forget this. We were at Lewisham Station and we saw these two men, and one of them was like, oh, hey, and he must have kind of gestured to come over. And he introduced Anton to his friend, but he introduced him as Rio Ferdinand's brother. So this is when Rio was at West Ham as well in the first team. And Anton was a bit frustrated. And that story came back to me because I think about player identity. So it's like, if you're a footballer, when you go, it's like, oh, you still injured? Or you're going to go to that club? Like, everything is about you as a player. You have no identity. And players take it on, because even you look at companies and even their email addresses, it's their squad numbers and their names, the nicknames, the culture. It's like a whole lifestyle. Parents could help their kids to kind of separate. But the problem you have is parents get pulled in too. And parents openly say that they see their kids as their pension, you know, and parents are pimping out their kids. And the clubs are doing it too. So they're taking on, we want your child, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna put you on the payroll, we're gonna put you as a scout. Like, the whole system is corrupt, but football is like any business with loads of money in it. Everyone's gonna try and get the advantage. I think sometimes people talk about football as though it's an anomaly, but it's because we all got a vested interest in it. Everyone loves it. No, football's like everything else. So it's difficult for players, because if you're a young player and your parents are not aware, or they're trying to make a bit of dough out of you, you're struggling. And that's another reason why I wrote the book, because at the end of the day, it helps you to understand the game, whether you're a parent or if you're a player and your parents lost, then you can actually read that and say, do you know what? No, I've got a bit of whereabouts from the stories of those who became before me and this research to understand this game. And to be honest with you, understand it better than the coaches that are leading me and the managers.
I had a few questions. Basically, what do you think good has happened recently in football? If there's one thing that you could say that's good that changed.
I think the good thing that's happened in football is the EPPP. So elite player performance something. Can't remember what the last P is. But what that was is that systematically clubs were required to do certain things. I have a psychologist on site. I think this is just Premier League, by the way. Have welfare officers, and there's other things that they have to have in place. So that's a good thing, because now what happens is players have access to people that they can speak to. Doesn't mean they're going to use them, but I think that's one plus. Because the negative you have, and obviously we can't have everything happening at once, is that a lot of players think, they work for the club, I'm not going to say anything to this person. But also, they say something to this person, it's a safeguarding issue, but that person isn't strong enough to then challenge the coach or bring it up. That's a huge problem. And also, it's confidential, so it could be an issue, but not big enough for the therapist to breach confidentiality. So now the club still have a player, who's not performing at their best or carrying a lot, but the coach doesn't know about it. So I think the next stage in an ideal world is that you would have some sort of therapy as part of the syllabus, as part of the coaching syllabus. Because what I want to know is, am I having a negative impact on you? So I want to develop my skills so I can coach you the best I can, no matter what background you're from, no matter what your troubled past is. Can I get the best out of you? So first of all, I'm not installing something, or I'm not triggering something, but also if you have an issue, that you're comfortable enough to come and speak to me. That you're not going to somebody else, because then you're still carrying this stuff. I don't know about it. You're going to a therapist there, I don't know about it. I'm treating you a certain way because I don't know about it, or I'm spiking something with you because I'm shouting at you, treating you as if everything's fine. And I think for the game to move on, I think you need coaches who can ignite something in you as a person. And that's why Mourinho, until his second stint at Chelsea and Man United, he had Materazzi crying, he had Adebayo on the bench at Real Madrid saying he was ready to go to war for him. He had Wesley Sneijder, he sent him on holiday to Ibiza during the season. Wesley Sneijder was saying, I could not believe he invested so much trust in me, I was willing to give my all for him. The list goes on. Benny McCarthy's mum, when he was at Porto, said, I want to look after your son. Benny McCarthy was saying he didn't need to do that. Again, these guys were like, I want to do whatever it took for him. And I knew it that he studied NLP, but I couldn't confirm it until my friend Michael Bill, who worked with him at Chelsea, said it to me. And I was like, bingo. Because I knew that his approach, it was too spot on. I can go into other areas. And he encouraged Billsy, and he encouraged Alex Inglethorpe, who's now at Liverpool, to do the same and look at life coaching and look at all these other aspects outside of the football world. And it's about tapping into the person. So EPPP is where football has progressed recently. Well, I would say the Premier League has progressed recently. And I think that to progress even to the next stage is for coaches to take it upon themselves to further develop themselves as a coach in general and manager in general, not as a football coach or as a football manager, as a coach and as a manager.
So what I really love about the book is that it can be applied to any industry whatsoever. So I'm taking stuff out of it. All my friends are going to take stuff out of it who reads it. So I think anyone that's watching this, you should definitely go and get the book. You should definitely buy it and really actually apply the stuff in there. Now, I have a very strong question I have to ask you, right? And it might sound strange considering what I've just said to you. It could be about the book, or it can be about yourself. What would you like your legacy to be? Or what would you like, first of all, what would you like the book to do for people?
My overall goal was, one of my mentors says, awareness is curative. And I wanted to create an awareness for people, for change, to plant a seed. So when you read about unconscious competence, it's about saying, oh my, there's more to me that I was unaware of. And that not only is that good that I can develop myself, but then what else is going on? When I look at state, it's not just about me losing confidence and having confidence. There are so many variables to this, and how my state changes in different places. I could be in school and be low, in a football pitch be high. I could be all those things, but I have a greater sense of self, because you can't just develop it and have like positive thinking like The Secret. It goes deeper than that. You know, when I look at player premium, it's to develop a sense of empathy for those boys who are from the hood. They don't choose to be aggressive, they are hurt people, and actually society is doing them an injustice because the support in place at the moment is not good enough. I do counselling in schools right now and people are just getting thrown away. I see it in football, they're just getting thrown away. So I can go into every chapter, and this is what I struggled with when I wrote the book, because the publishers never were saying, so who's this targeted at? It's targeted at everyone. Your football coach, your parent, a player, a police officer, you know, a teacher, it's everyone, because it's about using the power of football to kind of open you up to yourself and look at the connections with others. But yes, also within the football world, but also outside, you know. So I think the legacy is about creating awareness. I think that's the foundation for everything. We undervalue that. Everyone's so into building skills and all these other things. That's the sole legacy. What I want to do is create that awareness, and for people to then go away and build something from that.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.